So here we are back in town for our final segment of this Let's Play. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the new buildings that have unlocked. The first one is the Guild. Now, the Guild is where we train our adventurers and make them stronger and give them new or stronger abilities. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use our resources as the lord of this hamlet and unlock the first tier of new upgrades, and then we can start upgrading some of our characters. So I'm just going to give my Crusader some slightly stronger abilities, and then I'm going to do the same with my Vestal. Both are very good characters, and they will benefit a lot from having slightly stronger abilities. So the second of our new buildings is the Blacksmith, and the Blacksmith is where we improve the weapons and armor of our adventurers, and this is a very classic medieval element. So our blacksmith produces new swords, new armor, basically whatever our adventurers need. However, we spent our resources to upgrade some of our other buildings, so we can't actually make use of the blacksmith. So we're just going to have to go straight into the adventure, and we're going to move away from the ruins now and go on our first adventure in the Weald. And the Weald is very reminiscent of the old road that we saw right at the beginning of the game. It's this sort of twisted, uncomfortable forest where there's strange mushrooms and vines growing off of the trees, and the pathways are flanked by gravestones and other slightly unsettling statues, as you can see right here. So, as has been previously mentioned back in the first segment of this Let's Play, the Weald and the Old Road are both sort of subversions of the classic enchanted forest medieval trope, where, in every medieval setting you've got this magical forest where strange things happen, but generally enchanted forests are good places, or at least only sort of mischievous places where strange things happen. However, in Darkest Dungeon, it sort of flips that on its head, and the Weald is sort of a terrifying, unsettling, sort of creepy-feeling forest. And as we can see in this monster encounter, we're fighting sort of strange, bizarre mushroom creatures, and the cultists from the ruins are back as well. So in terms of new elements, over the last run we just did, there's some two new characters in our lineup. I brought the Crusader and the Vestal back for this dungeon run, and having both of them upgraded is certainly a benefit. However, we've got two new characters that I recruited at the Stagecoach just before this segment began. We have the Man-at-Arms, who's sort of a traditional soldier type character. He's a warrior, he's heavily armored. He would sort of be the equivalent of a classic fighter if this were a game like Dungeons & Dragons. He doesn't have special powers like the Crusader does, and he very much is just meant to hit hard and block hits to my team. Our second character is the one in the last space in our lineup. He's the Occultist, and he's a fairly interesting, unique character in this game, because he's the one character that the players can get who actually uses magic in the same kind of way that the enemies do. Like the sort of eldritch powers that we saw from the cultists that we fought in the ruins, the Occultist uses tentacles to attack foes. He casts hexes on the enemy, and his magic is sort of very dark and very grim. And as you can see on his character model, he's holding a skull with a candle in its head. It's sort of suggested that magic in this game is very dark, as opposed to the holy powers wielded by our Crusader and Vestal that are more sort of in line with something God-given in another setting like Warcraft or Dungeons & Dragons. So magic in this game is sort of seen as an evil thing, and the only characters who wield magic are evil themselves, and their magic is very visibly evil in the same way that the magic or the holy power of the Crusader and Vestal are visibly good, with sort of glowing light as their energy. Now, before we move on from this screen, I just want to draw your attention to some of the visuals on this particular battle room. So we've still got the standard spread of mushrooms and decaying trees that we've seen elsewhere in the Weald and along the old road, but right in the middle of this screen we also have a large mausoleum or some other kind of burial structure scattered in amongst the graves. And that's going to be a common thing that we see over the next few rooms that we look at, where it looks like this once was a clear area and the forest just sort of grew over whatever structures were here. So let's just take a quick cut again to a new screen, and here you can see sort of the true decaying state of the forest. You'll notice that a lot of the trees are broken and fallen down. There's mushrooms everywhere. It looks more like a swamp than a forest. There isn't a leaf in sight. And again, we're going to do another quick cut to a third background screen, and we see sort of a dilapidated house with a classic medieval thatched roof, except there's mushrooms growing through the thatching, and there's skulls scattered everywhere. It really looks like the forest sort of grew over this whole area, but now everything, including the forest, has died. And as you can see on the trees in the background of this shot, there's no leaves on anything. Everything's broken and falling apart. So because we've already seen quite a bit of the gameplay throughout this Let's Play, I just want to move on from the Weald and come back to town, where some new buildings have unlocked for us, namely the very distinctly non-medieval sanitarium, where we can place some of our adventurers, just like in the tavern or the abbey, and we can place our adventurers here and cure them of various negative quirks that they have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my Crusader into the sanitarium and attempt to cure him of his kleptomania, because although you haven't seen it in this Let's Play, throughout the recording of this video, he's been periodically taking my treasure and adventuring supplies, which has been quite annoying moving forward. So I'm going to place him there, and then I'm going to place some of my other characters in the tavern and the abbey to start healing them of their stress. So the last stop that I'm going to make while we're in town is the stagecoach, where we're going to find the last two characters that I'd like to talk about during this Let's Play. The first is the Leper, who's a frontline fighting character, just like the Man-at-Arms and the Crusader. However, the Leper comes with some interesting intertextuality, because he's very reminiscent of the King of Jerusalem from Kingdom of Heaven. They've given him sort of the golden face mask, and the implication is that he's a frontline fighter because he feels no pain because of his leprosy. The second character that we have here is the Hellion, and the Hellion is a classic example of sort of the noble savage, or of northern medievalism. We've got this warrior character outfitted with primitive clothing and furs and wielding a large weapon, and even has some classic blue face paint, like something out of Braveheart. So those are the last two characters we're really going to be able to talk about in this playthrough. There are a few others that we haven't really discussed. There's the Arbalester, who has just never appeared in the stagecoach throughout the course of this Let's Play. And the Bounty Hunter, which, while I have one recruited, I never had a chance to use in an actual playthrough or an actual dungeon run. So that is about all of the time that we have to really delve into this game. There are a number of aspects that we haven't had a chance to look at. There are two more zones where you can go on dungeon adventures. There's the Warrens, which is this raggedy system of tunnels filled with pigmen, and there's the Cove, which very much cranks up the otherworldly feeling of this game by pitting you against strange sea creatures with bizarre-looking weaponry. There are also a series of boss fights that are required in order to advance the game, and each boss fight comes with its own little snippet of plot that tells you the story of how these various bosses came to be in these different areas. So what I'm hoping I've demonstrated with this series of videos is that Darkest Dungeon presents a very grotesque but very medieval world. Everything in this game that's considered to be ancient or old is steeped in medieval architecture. The ruins are supposed to be part of the ancient seat of the player character's family, and it's full of arched windows and arched doorways and other such things. However, this game also likes to pull things from different parts of the Middle Ages and later in an attempt to demonstrate that this setting is not entirely medieval. We're looking back on the medieval period and exploring it and discovering it along with our characters. Yet, despite this, the developers have collapsed a number of different aspects of the Middle Ages and bundled it all up and put it into the game under the same style. So we have Northern medievalism through the Hellion. We have some intertextuality with the leper. We have crusaders and religious characters in the form of the Crusader and the Vestal, but we also have strange, evil magic in the form of the Occultist. We have all of these different periods collapsed into one and put into the game. As well as the characters, we've also seen an interesting combination of early modern and medieval concepts in the structures and the things that we see around our hamlet. We have very medieval buildings like the tavern and the abbey, and then we have an early modern creation like the sanitarium. But because of the gameplay, because of the stress and the quirks and how they interact with the characters, none of them feel particularly out of place because they all have their part in the game and a purpose. And all of the game mechanics allow for these different disparate concepts drawn from medieval and early modern sources and mixes them together in a way that doesn't feel particularly out of place. And the sort of gritty, stylistic gameplay and visuals really helps to tie it all together, despite the fact that it's drawn from a number of different areas.